President Biden claims that he is confident he's going to get something done with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. He wants to push that Build Back Better bill into 2022 now.
So did Senator Manchin break his commitment to you?
Senator Manchin and I are going to get something done. Thank you.
Yes, Manchin later outlined changes that he would like to see should he support anything, including bringing down the price tag, which, of course, the CBO has told us is $5 trillion, removing the gimmicks, which, of course, right now show a number of federal programs sunsetting after 1 year, which is not realistic. New York Congressman, Foreign Affairs Committee member, and New York gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin is with me now to talk more about policy and beyond. Great to see you, sir. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Great to see you, Maria.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you, Lee. Do you think we are going to see this Build Back Better plan reemerge in 2022 and the Democrats trying hard to push it further?
I think that the bill that passed the House is dead. There's a good possibility that there's going to be conversations, negotiations, and potentially a new bill. I believe that it will be smaller than what this prior bill is that passed the House that Senator Manchin said he's just not going to vote for. But I could see the Democrats and President Biden trying to work hard to pass something. But we'll see what the final product is. Senator Manchin, he obviously doesn't want to. He's not somebody who's going to be making changes to the state and local tax deduction. He's not somebody who's in favor of the expanded child tax credit. And as you pointed out, he doesn't like the size of the bill. He doesn't like the electric vehicle component. But there are other components of the bill, from health care and more, that he might be willing to compromise on with a smaller price tag.
So it's anybody's guess what ends up being in this new revised something that the Democrats will try to push through. For example, is the bank surveillance going to be in there? I mean, there's a whole host of plans to monitor what we do with our money. 87,000 new IRS auditors is what Joe Biden wants to have, with the $80 billion in there to pay for that so that they can find what Joe Biden claims are tax cheats. We don't know if that's going to be in there. We also don't know if all of these higher taxes are going to be in there. A lot of expectations that the middle class is going to see 30% increases in taxes. Do you have a sense of any of that? Because they're going to have to pay for whatever they put in there. If they want that $555 billion in green spending, they're going to need to raise taxes, right?
Well, sure. So for a while, President Biden and others were saying that this bill was going to cost zero. Obviously, everybody, for good reason, was highly skeptical of that charge. And even if you are raising taxes to pay for it, it's still spending a certain amount of money that you should acknowledge that price tag, as opposed to just saying that it's zero. As a member of the House Financial Services Committee, we had Chairman Powell in front of the committee, Secretary Yellen, and I was asking them whether or not, as they make their inflation estimates, whether or not they are assuming that a bill is passed or not passed. And we were just not getting clear answers. There's a lot of concern about inflation, the price tag of this bill, and there's uncertainty here as to whether or not the Fed, the estimates that are coming out, are assuming that anything's going to pass or not pass, and that's a big question mark. As far as the IRS component, I addressed that as well during the testimony here that came up in the last couple of weeks, because I've heard a lot of concern from small businesses, from individuals, from average, everyday Americans who just don't want the government spying on their bank account. They want more freedom, and they don't want the heavy hand of big government watching each of these individual small transactions.
Right, of course. Look, it's a page right out of the Communist China playbook, right? Surveillance. That's what it is. Meanwhile, voters don't want it, and yet the Democrats seem to have a tin ear when it comes to what the American people want. We've got a new poll here from PBS, NPR, and Marist finds 2/3 of independent voters, a full 2/3 of independents, disapprove of Joe Biden. Only 29% actually back him. That is an 8-point decline in just 1 week, Congressman. Your reaction, and why aren't your colleagues on the left seeing these polls and saying, hold on a minute, American families don't want what we're selling. Maybe we should pull it back. They're just doubling down.
Yeah, and to understand the answer to your question is you have, if you were to oversimplify it, two different parts of the Democratic Party. You have the further left progressives, AOC and her friends, and then you have the others, and you might call them centrists. They're closer to the center than AOC and her friends. And after November 2nd, part of the Democratic Party said, hey, look, we just took this shellacking because the priorities of the far left are too extreme and you're turning people off and you're making Democrats say this isn't the same Democratic Party, it's left to me. But the problem is that the other extreme of the party, AOC and her friends, the far left, they say that the reason why they took the shellacking is because they haven't yet passed all of these priorities. They think that it's validation.
They want
Poll
more,
numbers like you're showing, they believe that that's validation, that people are reacting to them not passing these bills and that they should do it faster. President Biden is suffering in the polls from what happened in Afghanistan to the southern border to the chaos with this multi-trillion-dollar tax and spend bill. And the president just seems to be slowing down and people want competency.
Yeah, unbelievable. Congressman, real quick before you go, the mask mandate in New York, what do you want to say about it? I mean, look, the Biden administration keeps trying to force mandates down our throats, even though judge after judge keeps telling them that these things are unconstitutional. What about Kathy Hochul's plans?
The problem is that the plans, the ideas are all fitting under this box now of mandates, fines, firings, and threats. People want ideas. The conversation should be not to instill fear in the population. Early info from Omicron is that while contagious, it's causing milder reactions. That's a good thing. We're also seeing a smaller peak. That's what happened in South Africa. Hopefully that's what plays out here. But let's talk about access to more testing, access to the vaccines for people who want it, access to the treatment for people who need it, and the development of more treatment, more therapeutics.
Therapeutics, exactly right. Congressman, that's what we want. We want to be able to care for ourselves should we get sick. Congressman, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you. Good to see you, and thanks very much for joining us this year on Mornings with Maria.
Merry Christmas.
All right, we will see you soon.